time, he was somebody that was bidding on Paul Meyer Merlot. Paul Meyer Merlot sticks out in my mind with Rudy. You know, high quality wine, but you know, it's got 1 0, not 4 zeros.
Now, $1,600, $1,700, $1,800. $1,800 for the single bottle of La Tâche, 1985. $1,800, $1,800 bid at 18.
What was really strange was 18 months later, he reached out to me on the telephone and said that he wanted to meet with me because he wanted to be a player in the auction scene, which I found kind of odd because he had just been a geeky kid drinking California Merlot.
Can you help? Or just stop?
Hey, what's up, Rudy?
Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing?
How are you, man?
Very well.
Good. I brought some wines for us to drink. Can you help me with this?
His breadth of knowledge seemed to be pretty extraordinary. He actually taught me, you know, almost everything I know.
He was a real cult figure, and everybody talked about him.
Ciao, bello. Come stai? Pues, caballero.
He had this mysterious background. Where did he come from?
Part of what created his mythology was he has an extraordinary palate, the best palate of anyone I've ever met in my entire life. Any wine, from California to France, any type of wine, any vintage. Rudy was extremely, insanely, unbelievably correct on all the wines.
The art of blind tasting, it comes naturally, but you have to make an effort. You know, you really have to work at it. You taste wine blind, you identify the wine, and you know, that's the badge of honor for a sommelier. Do a little swirl and just see if it's anything unusual with the alcohol. Looking at the legs, how slow or fast they fall. You smell it, and then it kind of just tingles off senses to your brain. And then you look through your Rolodex in your mind of all these different wines you've tasted. And I'm like, what could this be?
I think a wine palate is very similar to athletic ability. Sorry. Wine tasting is a lot about knowing the vocabulary and being able to express, using that vocabulary to other wine tasters, what it is that you're experiencing. I totally get that peppery citrus that you're talking about.
Yeah. I've met Rudy.
Tony! What's up, Tony?
I met him at a tasting. I was very, very impressed. He identified almost all the wines blind. He must have learned by drinking an enormous amount of different wines. But that's the only way to learn.
18.
You always wonder why and how.
That's why, 18 months, and now I have, pretty much like 3,000 bottles of wine,
We're gonna make a booklet,
That's it.
Yeah.
Rudy's Adventure.
I met Rudy first in 2004, I believe. There was a luncheon for one of the producers, and we quickly became friends. He was very warm to everyone. I really liked the guy.
It's fun because there's a lot of wines today that I haven't tried. So.
We hung out a lot. We went to wine dinners.
How you doing today?
Good, man. Tired, but good.
Trip?
From 5 a.m. in the morning. Long trip. 14 hours drive.
Where'd you drive from?
LA, man. LA, man.
The people in this town, excuse my language, are full of shit. But not with Rudy.
Just wakes me up,
Nothing he did was short of real class, warmth, and graciousness.
You like everything so far?
For my birthday, he gave me a bottle of, I think, a Paul Roger 49 champagne, which is incredible.
What do you have right now?
Colgan. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very different from the Herb Lamb.
Yeah.
I don't know, is it 100% cap because it's like a Meritage.
He just was a lover of wine, is a lover of wine. I keep talking in the past because it's just still very strange.
He never said something to me that I could look at and find was untrue. But he didn't ever say that much. I was a reporter and I was curious about the auction market, and I sat there at the back of Christie's and I noticed a very, very young man spending a lot of money, surrounded by people that I knew were movie producers, clearly the focus of everyone's attention. That's a story. Who is this guy? And why is he spending this kind of money? And what does he want to do with his wine?
Today I can't. Today's overbooked. Tomorrow, call me. I might.
It took months to get him to sit down and have a cup of coffee with me.
I gotta go in 5 minutes. I have a big burgundy tasting. Let me move around.
Go ahead. Let me have the honor to try my wine.
It was like another month or two before I got him to sit down and actually have an interview with me. He proceeded to serve some of his great wines.
Oh my God, this is, it's corked. No.
He lived with his mother in Arcadia, and the people around him would say that his family owned the Heineken distributorship for all of China, fabulously wealthy, and he was on $1 million a month allowance for his wine. And when I asked Rudy about this stuff, he said, I don't talk about my family, and he wouldn't tell me anything. I sort of assumed he was a rich kid looking for something to do. The auction houses were giddy. No one had ever spent that much money that fast. It was ruining the quiet little club that the old guys had.
I've been collecting for 38 years, I guess. So I've got, lots of DRC labels, and they're all categorized by particular domains or groups of domains. There's Ponceaus in here. I've got mostly from the 80s. That's a major wine. Yeah, that's one of his best. Sometimes you only get to taste them once in your life, if you get to taste them at all, so it's kind of fun. I was introduced to Rudy by John Capon at an Acker auction event over in Beverly Hills.
I want to drink Burgundy. That's me, of course. No.
He said, well, you're a Burgundy collector. What Burgundies do you like? I said, well, my favorites are probably Roumier, Rousseau, and DRC, Romanée-Conti.
You got that right, my friend. You got that right.
Right after that, he said, you should buy wines with me. He said, I buy cellars and collections in Europe all the time. And then I remember Rudy asked me, what's the oldest Roumier you've ever had? And I said, it was 1969. And I told him that I'd been lucky enough to find a couple at auction, that they're real hard to find. And then Rudy said, well, in the last year, I've had 1945, 1949, 1955, and 1962 Roumier Bonmar. He picked the greatest red Burgundy vintages from that era. I was just flabbergasted. I had been looking for him for 25 years.
Burgundy is unique on the planet. A band of slope, so to say, which is 70 kilometers long on 1 kilometer wide, and composed by 1,250 different appellations. Cette année, il y avait beaucoup de raisins, et on verra si tout ça va tenir le coup jusqu'aux vendanges. Le paradis, paraît-il, est là-haut. En Bourgogne, je pense qu'il est plutôt en bas. Il est en bas par les racines et par les caves. We are just 11 meters below the ground level here, and we are really the 2 feet in the history of Burgundy. See here, tiny roots from vines, which are probably here since 200 years. The vine is sucking, so to say, the rock. Going up on the hill on the other side of the street, the vines will not find the same mineral elements, and they will never find the same taste and aromas. The most important for me is what nature gives. We are only a tiny element of the chain. If one element breaks, the chain is broken, and you cannot reach the glass of wine.
Wine is the expression of place. And Burgundy is the ultimate example of this. It's a wine for obsessives. Someone who really knows their stuff can tell you the difference blind between something that was grown here and something that was grown 40 feet away.
It's really good.
Look at where the fill is.
Fucking incredible. This is probably insane.
This is where I go crazy. This is my crazy spot. I get nervous and my blood pressure goes up.
It's the ultimate existential art form. It's living in a bottle, it's alive. And then you drink it and you absorb it into your body. It's art that becomes part of you, literally.
Well, that's part2, who's a great producer. Hey, Carl.
Hello.
How you doing, babe?
I'm good.
A lot of good shit here. You have a few drinks and you come here and spend 100 grand on wine? This is the place. This is the place, yeah. They're very, very reasonably priced. Where can you get a 61 white for 600 bucks? From 1961. This is crazy time. Yeah? 1990 Romani Conti. This is maybe one of the greatest bottles ever made of wine, right here. 20 grand, maybe?
20 grand. He knows his prices.
20 grand for the bottle. And you want this. If you like wine, you need this, you want this.
But you have to decide, do you want this or you want a Prius?
Yes, exactly. You trade it for a Prius.
When we drink wine, we don't look at the price value, you know. We look at what we get from the wine, the excitement, you know, the passion, the way they make the wine and everything. It's not about the price of the wine, you know. Some people...
Rudy was very generous with everybody. I had some of the greatest Romani Contis with him, you know, I will ever have.
Put on your best Burgundy face. Who wants to drink wine?
At the time when all this was happening, there was a huge demand for old, fine wine. As a whole, Burgundy very quickly went from affordable to unattainable. I guess you can call it the Rudy era.
It's very fine sediment, so stand them up and then put the ice.
The economy was booming back then.
Not laying down.
There were such tiny quantities of Burgundy worldwide. There wasn't enough to satisfy the thirst.
It was all about liquidity, and it continues to be. And any time there's tremendous volatility in a market, and all asset classes move the same.
Dave, your go-to cellar is pretty good. Got some good stuff in here.
So many of my friends in finance collect wine because when you watch stocks all day on Bloomberg, right, and then you can see auction prices move, there's a certain pride to getting a good buy.
Today, there is no relation between the prices and what is in the bottle. When I sell a bottle at 100 euro, I see this bottle, when it's released, at 1,000. How come?
Dude, I just opened that bottle on Thursday. Now I feel bad. But opening it, that was in the bottle. Can I refill and put the cork back?
It was clear to me in very short order that he had revolutionized the wine market. Prices were skyrocketing. I thought it was a pretty smart little racket. He was cornering the market in a lot of these wines. What a clever thing to do. If you have a lot of money, go in, buy up a lot of wine, drive up the prices, and then start selling at the new high price. There was one other guy there who was always bidding furiously against Rudy, and that guy was the representative for Bill Koch.